Just before we go on, I just wanted to mention that Patty, forgive me if I'm interrupting the flow of things here, but that people, as they have questions, can write them down in the chat box, and we will be getting to them after in a little while. So Rukmini, yeah, we were completely stunned to see that he had died in jail. Actually, it coincided exactly when we voted on the documentary as the winner. We don't know anything about the circumstances that he died in. Is it likely that somebody wanted him dead?
It's possible. Tajikistan. So the death of Jay and Lauren and two others who were killed in that attack in July of 2019 is the first time that ISIS carried out a successful attack in Tajikistan, claimed it through their propaganda channel. But since then, there have been numerous prison riots and attacks within the prisons that ISIS has claimed, and that according to our sources are credibly ISIS, are members of, are Tajik members of the terrorist group that have returned to the country, that got arrested, and that are now causing these upheavals in jail. We got some information from some of our colleagues in Tajikistan that Hussein might have been involved in coordinating some of those uprisings. So there might have been, he was probably an uncomfortable entity for the security forces. But I have to stress that I don't know for sure what happened. We don't have visibility on that. Singeli, what would you add?
I mean, the official the official narrative is that he had kidney pain and had an infection and died of this ailment. And I think the general Tajikistan has been for years rated sort of lowest on the list of press freedom indices, but I think the general assumption is that there was some sort of foul play amongst, there's a skepticism, but no one has any evidence of that we are in touch with. So it's hard to say, but these things, everyone has their suspicions.
So in fact, your prison interview is actually the last public word we will ever hear from Hussein. So just before we leave that, Rukmini, during the scene of you sitting in prison with him, it seemed almost like it was sort of a personal quest for you. I mean, you asked him things like, what do you see when you look at me? Do you see a human being? And perhaps the most emotionally charged moment of the documentary is when you showed him a photograph of Jay and Lauren and said, what were you thinking killing these innocent young people? Firstly, was it a kind of quest to finally come face to face with, an ISIS murderer and be able to ask him the questions you hadn't been able to ask in so many other attacks? And what was the emotion of that moment when he kind of looked away, almost like he couldn't bear to look you in the eye?
Vivienne, like I said, I've by now interviewed dozens of ISIS members, the majority of them in jails, in Iraq, in Syria, in Europe, in Tajikistan. And what's interesting is once they are in that setting, so they're facing the brunt of the law, they divide themselves into two categories. Those who, in the face of what they are now looking at, which which is a life sentence, or in the case of Iraq and Syria, the possibility of a death sentence, some of them lose their commitment, to this group, and they'll say things to you like, "Oh, I was brainwashed. Oh, I didn't understand. Oh, I made a mistake." And then the real hardliners, which in a way, I have to say, I hope that this doesn't come out wrong, but I have some respect for them, you know, for those who in that moment, like Hussein, stick to their guns and say, this is what I believe in. This is why I did it. And I'm not backing down from that. And that's what Hussein did. He told me multiple times in that interview that if he could kill these beautiful young people again, he would do it again. I tried to push him and say, you are doing this because in a sense you're against American foreign policy. You see Americans as having killed innocent Muslims in other parts of the world, but are you aware that Jay and Lauren are agree with you? They are critics of this American foreign policy. You know, these are not people who agree with America's forays into these other lands. That was the one moment when I saw him back off a tiny bit, where he said, "Oh, I didn't know that," and then he immediately comes back and goes, "But I would still do it again." And I tried to personalize it by saying to him, "Look, I'm sitting here with you now. I have no ill will towards you, but if you were to meet me in the same situation that you met Jay and Lauren, would you kill me?" And he said, "Yes, I would. Yes, I would." So there was a level of integrity, I think, there, you know, that this man that by the pictures we saw immediately after his arrest had clearly been beaten. Now we know that he's died under these suspicious circumstances, and yet in spite of all that, he maintained this murderous ideology that he believed in. And so that, as a journalist, made me feel like I was in the face of something quite authentic. And journalistically, I found that meaningful and important.